Hello, thank you for watching Channel 24 and this edition of Your City at Work. Well, it's no mystery that Jonesboro has mosquitoes, and particularly this year they are a little bit worse than what they have been in the past. But I have an expert with me here today. It's Jim Stark from Vector Disease Control International. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, again, as I stated, it's no mystery. The mosquitoes are in Jonesboro and they're not going anywhere. But let's talk about why we have this problem and why it's particularly worse this year than it has been in, say, years past.
Well, this year, one would think with the dry weather that we wouldn't have that many mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. Well, we look back to January, February, March. It was a fairly mild winter, mm-hmm. and we was hoping we could get through this without much agricultural, irrigation.
Right.
Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of the dry weather. So we have to turn our attention to the rice fields, to the irrigation of the beans and corn, mm-hmm. and that just adds to our problem.
Sure.
We usually get our hatch about the 1st of June or mid-June on the rice field mosquito. This year, with no rain and the heat, you have a fluctuation in the rice field water. So when that water drains down to below a certain point, the mosquito will lay its eggs right above the water line. Mm-hmm. And when the farmers start to pump the rice back up, it goes back over those eggs and hatches them off. Right. And that is a constant cycle.
Right.
Constant cycle.
So even though it's dry, they're still having their breeding grounds because of the irrigation.
Even though it's dry, unfortunately, a dry spring and summer will actually produce more mosquitoes in an agricultural setting as we have here in the Delta.
Right. So
another thing, most of the crops were in early this year.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we got our first major hatch was around 1st of June.
Yeah.
And once that first major hatch starts, it's just a continuous cycle.
Mm-hmm.
She lays her eggs. She flies off the rice field. She looks for the blood meal. She'll come back, lay her eggs, and then that generation hatches and does the same thing. So it's just constant. Now, with that being said, with the rice going in June or earlier than that, April maybe, early April, we should have a shorter season come fall because when they start to drain the water off the rice, those a week or two after the water's gone off the rice, you should see a decrease in the rice field mosquito. Right. However, with the irrigation of the corn and the beans and any other crop that needs water this time of year, you're still going to see a continuation of that species mosquito.
Right. Now let's kind of talk about. You mentioned earlier that it was we did have an early or a wet spring, but the hatch was still roughly about the same time that it does every year. The weather itself impacts. If it blowing in from the south, which everybody knows that south of Jonesboro, South Jonesboro, there's a large area of land that's solely agricultural. That wind blows in from the south. Obviously, it's going to blow all the mosquitoes to the north. Correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a majority of people in Jonesboro know, most of the rice is southwest, south, and southeast, and east of town. Mm. The prevailing winds in the summertime in Jonesboro are out of the southwest. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where the bugs are coming from.
Right, and where a large portion of the mosquitoes are in high density as well.
Right. And high density would be south of the bypass. Not to say they're not north of the bypass, but any rice that is east of town or northeast of town on a southwest wind will be blown off somewhere else. Hopefully.
Hopefully, right.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, that's the problem. We understand the problem. You guys are a contract of the city. We pay you guys to control our mosquitoes. So let's talk about what you guys are doing to help lasso this problem for us.
Okay. We run approximately 7 trucks each night. Mm-hmm. That number may depend on the population. The city of Jonesboro, on my maps at the office, it is divided into 11 zones. That 11 zones encompasses about 85 square miles.
Right.
So if you do the math, you can't cover the entire city of Jonesboro in one night.
Right.
Unless you had a whole fleet of trucks.
Right.
And unfortunately, we do not have the resources for that.
Yeah, well, we could say the same. You know, our trash routes that way.
Yeah.
A section of town gets broken up and they
Right.
cover it over a week.
Right.
They can't pick up the trash
Right.
in 1 week. This
Right.
city is too big. So certainly
And-
understandable.
And the way we determine where we're going to spray is I have about 20 light traps set around the city. Light traps do not, if you hang a light trap in a person's yard, it's not there to catch every mosquito in that person's yard.
Right.
It's there to catch a random number of mosquitoes, and we run those twice a week. And we check those twice a week, and we get the species that's there, and we get the number that's there.
Right.
Now, the reason we get the species, that tells us if it's coming from a roadside ditch, or if it's coming from artificial containers in your yard,
Right.
or if it's coming out of the rice fields.
Right.
So those 3 or 4 factors determine what kind of chemical we're going to use, how we're going to spray, because there are some mosquitoes that are only active during the daytime,
Right.
and there's some that's only active for a few hours after dark, and there's some that's active all day long
Right.
and all night long.
Right.
So we primarily, this time of year, after the rice is being pumped up every day, our main problems naturally are south of the bypass.
Right.
These zones will get hit more than the zones in North Jonesboro, or even East Jonesboro or Northeast Jonesboro.
Right.
And and like I said, we do run 6 nights a week. We do not spray on Sunday.
Right.
But and we try to even it out. But if we have, say, a zone that's south of the bypass that we go in there one night, and 2 days later my light traps are the same or higher, well, naturally we're going to go back down there.
Right.
Okay. If I have low counts in the north traps, we're not going to go there as much.
Right.
That's not to say there's not bugs. I do understand they are.
Right.
But that's the way we kind of analyze the thing.
Sure.
And that's what we do.
Now,
That's all
you guys also do flyover sprays, correct?
Correct.
What's the schedule on that, and how
There
does
is
it work?
there is no set schedule. I think the contract in Jonesboro is for 5 aerials. So far, we've done 2.
Okay.
The last one was mainly over Craighead Forest and over the Southside Ball Field area.
Right.
I forgot. I think it was like 11,000 acres we done that night,
Sure.
and that was right before the 4th of July.
Right.
Okay. Now the aerial too is also based on mosquito population. And when you see the aircraft, that usually means that we have run out of all our resources on the ground.
Sure.
We're not able to get them back to where they're supposed to be.
Right.
So the aircraft will be the last resort. And
Okay.
that's not to say, I don't hesitate to call it in if I
Right.
need it. So,
Right. The air support.
air support, yes.
Yeah. Now the spray itself, is it designed to kill the mosquito? Is it designed to repel them? What's the spray itself? What does it actually
Okay,
do?
that's a very good question. This this particular insecticide that comes out of these trucks, it sprays through the tank and goes through an atomizer, and that breaks that individual chemical into individual droplets. Okay, the mosquito has to be contacted with one of those droplets. I know when a truck goes by, you see a big fog,
Right.
but in that fog is droplets.
Right.
If somehow he can get through that fog without getting a drop of that chemical on him, he's not going to be killed.
Right.
But like I said, he has to be contacted. It's a chemical.
And it kills the mosquito.
It kills a mosquito. It may not kill him right off. Some chemical works on the nervous system of the mosquito. If that's the case, he'll or she will go absolutely nuts for 2 or 3 minutes, and land on anything, and she'll bite anything.
Right.
But after that, they'll start dying off.
Sure. Okay. All right. And now you mentioned that you have the light traps in the neighborhood, some on the properties of homeowners, and it tells you kind of what species of the mosquito is, which ultimately tells you where it's coming from.
Correct.
What can the homeowner do to help alleviate the mosquitoes that are being, I guess, hatched on their property, the mosquitoes that they're causing, as
Right.
opposed to the rice field? There's nothing you can do about the rice field mosquitoes.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I'm
But
glad you said that.
What about the homeowners? What can they do?
This time of year, when we're getting the influx off the rice, off the bean fields and corn fields, or any crops being irrigated, there's really not much you can do. Now, what we call the homegrown mosquito is usually an artificial container mosquito, which means that this particular species will breed in artificial containers. Old buckets, wheelbarrows, boats, anything that's holding water is probably going to produce mosquitoes.
Sure.
So my advice, and just to back up a little bit, the egg cycle of the mosquito goes from eggs to larvae to adult. This can take anywhere from 3 to 7 days. It all depends on the species.
Sure.
So my advice would be to dump all these artificial containers every 3 or 4 days. I'm talking dog bowls for water. Bird baths especially are really bad.
Sure.
Flower pots. If you have a aluminum boat in your yard that's just sitting on the ground and holding water, it's going to produce bugs.
Sure.
And this will be extremely important in the springtime, and then after the rice drains off and we start kind of dwindling down on these on the agricultural mosquitoes.
Right.
And the homeowner can actually grow a lot of mosquitoes.
Right.
One particular place that's overlooked a lot is your rain gutters. If they're clogged rain gutters and it has water, that is an ideal spot for mosquitoes.
Right.
But just use common sense. If
Sure.
you see something holding water and it's been sitting there for over 7 days, it probably has larvae in it.
Sure. Well, and right now it's very dry.
Very
We're
dry.
not getting much rain, so as far as like the rain gutters and all that, it's really not an issue for these guys.
Right.
Personally, I would think that these people watering their yards, they're spraying over into a bucket of some sort. It's
Exactly.
just overspraying, and it's
Overspraying into
and,
the bucket.
Yeah.
Yes.
They just need to watch out for
Right.
that type of stuff and be mindful while they're
Exactly.
watering their yard that what they're spraying
Right.
on and to dump that water.
And it doesn't take but just a few minutes to make a walk around and see what. And if you do have something that's been standing there for 6 or 7 days, just stick your head over in there and look, and you'll see them little wigglers going, and that's larvae. And just turn it over.
Get rid of them.
Get rid of them. Get rid of them.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned just a second ago that the way that you guys determine where to spray is based upon your traps, and but it also comes in from customer complaints, correct?
Sure does.
So, if someone has questions regarding what they can do to help, or if they want to call in and just, I guess, I hate to say complain, but inform you guys that it's a pretty big problem in their neighborhood, who do they contact and how do they contact you?
Okay, they are more than welcome to call our office here in Jonesboro. I'll give you the number in a minute, but that's how we do. In addition to our light traps and our surveillance and our larviciding and everything else we do during the daytime, individuals call in and say, "Hey, there's a ditch behind my house that's been holding water," or "My neighbors abandoned their swimming pool."
Right.
Now, we can't go on that property for that pool, but if we can find the owner and try to get them to, if we can get permission to go on that land, I can throw some chemical in that abandoned swimming pool.
Sure.
But there again, if I'm getting a lot of calls from a particular area in Jonesboro, then I know that we need to do something.
Sure.
Or if they need extra spray, if they get, they're opening up the door and they can't go in, and every time they go in, 1,000 mosquitoes run in there, yeah, give us a call and we'll get out there and see what we can do.
Sure.
It may not be that day,
Right.
because especially after a hatch. I'll go in a little bit of after a hatch. They don't expect. I would not want the residents to expect that it's going to be an overnight deal.
Sure.
You got millions of mosquitoes, and they call on Monday and the mosquitoes are gone on Tuesday. That's not
Right.
going to happen, because
Sure.
it takes us a week or so to get a handle on them and get them back down to where they're tolerable levels.
Sure.
And about the time we get that done, then there's another hatch coming in. So it's just a continuous circle.
Right.
But yes, we do use people that call in. Yes, if they need extra spray and they call us, and if I get several from that area, I know, well, we need to go in there and see what's going on.
Sure. Okay. Well, the number they call, how do they get hold of you guys?
Yes, the number is 933-6939.
Okay.
If no one's there in the office, because sometimes we're all out in the field, there is an answer machine, and that evening or the next morning we'll call them back. If they'll leave me their name and address, usually we can take it from there.
Sure.
And
Okay.
we'll get a truck out there to them.
Sure. Well, Jim, it was a pleasure to sit down and talk with you.
I enjoyed it, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for all the information. I hope it helps with a lot of the questions that most of our viewers may have, and may save you some phone calls. But hopefully these people will call you and let you know that they
Sure.
have a problem in their neighborhood.
Yes,
And guys, feel free to call the city, and we can give you that number again. We'll put it back on the screen. And again, Jim, thank you so much for sitting in with us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you guys for watching Channel 24.